In this lesson, we're going to be looking at compound inequalities. By the end, you should be able to solve compound inequalities that contain the words and or, and graph their solution using a number line. This word compound, what does it mean? It means to combine or add together, or to consider two things together. So we can look at things like compound sentences that take two thoughts and combine them together, such as I tossed the food and the seagull scramble. We've combined them. We can look at compound fractures in medicine, where we have the same bone being broken in two different spots. We're considering those two fractures together. We can look at compounds in science, where we're considering two different chemicals together. When we consider things together, we have to watch out for the wording, because how we word it can make the statement true or can make that statement false. So, using the word or, this tells us that one or the other of those statements must be true. So when we look at this sentence where it says a hexagon has 6 sides or an octagon has 7 sides, we know that this is a true statement because a hexagon does have 6 sides. It doesn't matter that the octagon doesn't have 7 sides because only one of those parts has to be true. When we use the word and, however, this word and tells us that both of those sides must be true. So an octagon has 8 sides and a pentagon has 6 sides. Well, this would be false because we know a pentagon doesn't have 6 sides, and both parts of that have to be true in order for the statement to be true. When we look at 3, it says a pentagon has 5 sides and a hexagon has 6 sides. Both parts of that are true. Therefore, that statement is true. 5 is less than 4 or 8 is less than 6. This would be a false statement because neither one of those parts is true, and in order for this to be true, one or the other would have to be true. 4 is greater than 0 and negative 4 is less than 0. This would be a true statement because both of those statements are in fact true. So a compound inequality is when we consider two inequalities together. We're looking at two inequalities and we're considering their solutions together. There are two types of compound inequalities. Those two types are called union and intersection. The intersection inequality would be the and compound. This is when your solution has to be in both of your inequalities. So both of the inequalities must be true in order for you to have a solution here. The intersection of the two inequalities is going to be shown by an overlap in the graph, and the symbol that we use to notate an and compound would be this N, or this arch. When we see the statement 3 less than x less than 5, what this is telling us is that x is greater than 3 and x is less than 5. So both parts of that need to be true. When we're doing and compound inequalities, oftentimes they're going to be written in this format. We like to rewrite this side so that the variable is on the left. Remember to reverse the inequality sign so that it's still open to the variable. We get to our union inequality. This is our or compound. This is when your solution just has to be in one or the other of your inequalities. So one or more of the inequalities should be true. The union meets either of the inequalities. So you'll have, this one isn't the intersection. You're looking in both spots. The symbol is this U or upside down arch. Again, we'll have, if we see 3 is less than x or x is less than 5, remember that we want to rewrite it so that the variable is in front, so that it says x is greater than 3. Remember to reverse the inequality sign so that it still opens up to the appropriate variable. Let's look at an example. Let's look at this one. We have z is less than, or 7 is less than z plus 2 is less than or equal to 11. This would be what is known as an and compound inequality. Anytime we have an inequality that is expressed in this form, it's an and compound. So what I would do is I would break it apart. I would consider this part of our inequality separate, and I would consider this part of our inequality separate when we want to solve them, because we need to find the solution. So what we're going to write is we're going to write 7 is less than z plus 2, and we're going to write z plus 2 is less than or equal to 11. And we're going to solve each of these inequalities separately, and then we're going to consider their solutions on the number line together. When we solve this one, we are subtracting 2 on both sides to get rid of, so that the z is by itself. This becomes 5 is less than z, or remember that we want the variable on the right side, or on the left side. So we would have z is greater than 5. Looking at the other inequality, we want to solve this one. Subtracting 2 on both sides again, we would have z is less than or equal to 9. And the variable is already on the left side here, so we don't have to rewrite that. So when we're graphing this one, we want to graph the solution. When we're graphing z is greater than 5, we're going to put a point at 5. We're going to use an open circle, and we want everything that is greater than that. The reason why we use the open circle is because since it's greater than 5, we don't want to actually include 5 as part of our solution. Looking at the less than or equal to 9, we do want to include the less than or equal to 9 because 9 is a point. It's less than or equal to it. And so we want to include that. Now, this is an intersection, so it has to satisfy both. It has to be both greater than 5, and it also needs to be less than or equal to 9. So our solution here would fall between this range right here. So our solution would be the intersection of those two inequalities. Let's look at another one. So here we have a union. This is our OR inequality. These two inequalities are already separated, so we don't need to separate them. We can just go about the process of solving, and then we're going to consider their inequalities together. Now for an OR, our solution can be in one or the other. So remember, we're not looking at the intersection, we're looking at both inequalities together, the whole thing. So let's solve this one. For solving this first one right here, we're going to add 7 to both sides because we do addition and subtraction first. Will leave us with 4k is less than or equal to 8. We want k, so we'll divide both sides by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2, so we know that k is less than or equal to 2. Or, we're going to solve this side. So we would subtract 12 from both sides. That's the opposite of positive 12. We have negative 9k is greater than, let's see, 18. And we want to divide both sides by negative 9 because we want to get rid of the negative as well. Remember that when we divide or multiply by a negative number, this inequality sign is going to flip. 18 divided by negative 9 is negative 2. And so we want to consider these two graphs together. So if we're looking at the first one, we have less than or equal to 2. So we have k is less than or equal to 2. We're going to include the 2 because it is less than or equal to it. And then we want everything that is less than negative 2. And so our solution here would be everything from 2 and below. So our solution here would be everything from 2 to below. Because this is an OR, it doesn't just have to be where they intersect. It could be where they don't intersect as well. Looking here, we have another and, we have another intersection. We have 2r plus 8 is greater than 16 minus 2r, and 7r plus 21 is less than or equal to r minus 9. So that means when we solve, our solutions must satisfy both inequality. They must be true for both. So for solving this inequality, remember we want to get variables to the same side. So we move the smaller of the two. So negative 2 is the one that we want to move. We move it by adding it on both sides. That would be the inverse operation. We have 4r plus 8 is greater than 16. Subtract 8 on both sides so that the variable is by itself. We'll have 4r is greater than 16 minus 8, which is 8. And divide both sides by 4. We get r is greater than 2. Looking at the other one, so we know that r is greater than 2 and Solving this one again, we'll move the smaller of the two variables, so I'll subtract r from both sides. This becomes 6r plus 21 is less than negative 9. We'll subtract 21 from both sides so that the variable is by itself. 6r is less than negative 30. Divide both sides by 6, and we get r is less than negative 5. So we know that r is greater than 2, but less than negative 5. So when we graph the solutions here, what we're going to see is that there will be no intersection. So we won't have numbers that are both greater than 2 and less than negative 5, because it has to be in their intersection. Because they don't intersect, we would call this the empty set. We also want to be able to write inequalities. So we see 1/2 a number is greater than 0 and less than or equal to 1. So 1/2 of a number, 1/2 n, is greater than 0 and 1/2 of a number is less than or equal to 1. So if we solve both, remember that to get rid of a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. So that'd be 2 over 1. 2 over 1. Fractions go away here, and we're left with n is greater than 0. We multiply by 2 over 1 on this one as well. And when we get rid of the fraction, fraction goes away here. It's 2 over 1. And we get n is less than or equal to 2. So here we have n is greater than 0 and n is less than or equal to 2. If we're graphing this on a number line, we'll put a spot for 0, we'll put a spot for 2. We want n is greater than 0, is less than or equal to 2. So close that in because we want less than or equal to. And we see that our intersection is between 0 and 2. Not including 0, but including 2. We also want to be able to write a compound inequality for the graph. So here our compound inequality would be x is greater than negative 2 and x is less than or equal to 5. Here we have x is less than negative 2 or x is greater than or equal to 1. Before moving on to the next video, please consider the following statement. The difference between the two types of compound inequalities is, as usual, please subscribe to the channel so that you get updates on videos as they are released.